Good evening, everybody, and welcome to tonight's City Council meeting. A very, very important night for our city, for our state, and for our country. And so we're certainly glad to have you here with us as well. Today is Tuesday, November 8th. And we'll start our meeting by introducing you to your City Council.
Council members Erpenbach.
Here.
Kiley.
Here.
Neitzert.
Here.
Rolfing.
Here.
Selberg.
Here.
Starr.
Present.
Staley.
Here.
Erickson.
Here.
Councilors, thanks for being here tonight as well. Appreciate it. In Sioux Falls, we start our City Council meetings with an invocation. And Council Chair Rolfing is kind enough to lead us in that invocation tonight. What I would ask is that you stand for the invocation and then remain standing for our Pledge of Allegiance. Council Chair Rolfing, thank you so much, sir.
Thank you, and let us pray. Lord, we thank you for bringing us together. This is a tremendously important evening for us as a council, for us as a city, but more importantly for us as a nation. Please guide us as the people who make that decision in the right paths. Help us to discern the decisions we make, and help us as we go on with our new leadership. Bless us tonight and all those who are present and those who are not. We especially think about the people who have a hard time taking care of themselves. We pray that you would guide us to help them and guide them as they move through life. Lord, we ask this all in the name of Christ, our Savior. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Good evening, everybody, and thanks so much for being here tonight. Is there anybody here with the American Diabetes Association tonight? Welcome. Thanks. Please come forward. Thank you so much for being here. Would you mind introducing yourself to the people of our town along with your guests, please?
Sure. My name is Gayla Whitey. I'm the State Advocacy Director for South Dakota for the American Diabetes Association, and this is my daughter.
Hi, your name, please?
Alexis Whitey.
Hi, Alexis. Welcome.
I'm Kayla Zabrowski with the American Diabetes Association.
Thanks, Kayla. And where are you three folks from?
We actually live in South Dakota.
That's okay. And as well?
I live in Omaha, Nebraska.
Oh, well, welcome. Welcome to our town and our state. Good to have you here. Thank you. So the three of you. Okay, great. Well, I do have a proclamation that I would like to read. The proclamation reads, whereas in the United States, nearly 30 million people, including 80,282 in South Dakota, have diabetes, a serious disease with potentially life-threatening complications such as heart disease, stroke, blindness, kidney disease, and amputation. Whereas approximately every 23 seconds, someone in the United States is diagnosed with diabetes, and an additional 86 million people in the United States are at risk for developing type 2 diabetes. Whereas recent estimates project that as many as 1 in 3 adults will have diabetes by 2050 if current trends continue. Whereas the 2016 American Diabetes Month theme, This is Diabetes, highlights the triumphs and daily challenges of the millions of Americans living with this chronic illness and empowers people at risk of developing diabetes with the tools to prevent a diabetes diagnosis. Now, therefore, I, Mike Huther, Mayor of the City of Sioux Falls, do hereby proclaim November 2016 as American Diabetes Month in Sioux Falls, and I encourage all citizens to recognize and be part of the American Diabetes Association's movement to confront, to fight, and to most importantly, change the future of this deadly disease. Everybody, let's give them a round of applause, please. Councilors, thank you. I really appreciate that opportunity. And folks, I had the real distinct pleasure to engage 2 Cub Scout packs, and they're in the audience tonight. And so, camera, get ready. But we do have first from Hilltop United Methodist Church. We have Cub Scout Pack 162. Would you mind standing, please? And also from Hillcrest Baptist Church, we have Cub Scout Pack 260. Would you please stand, please? They asked some great questions and kept me on my toes the whole time, so thank you. I really enjoyed it. Well, folks, we'll now move on to our consent agenda. Councilors, any motions, changes?
Move to approve, Nitzert.
Councilor Nitzert has made a motion to approve our consent agenda tonight, seconded by Councilor Staley. If there is no discussion, a roll call vote, please.
Council members Erpenbach?
Yes.
Kylie?
Yes.
Nitzert?
Yes.
Rolfing?
Yes.
Selberg?
Yes.
Starr?
Yes.
Staley?
Yes.
Erickson?
Yes.
Thank you, Council. That is passed 8-0. Our regular agenda, any changes to that, Councilors?
Move approval, Rolfing.
Second, Selberg.
Council Chair Rolfing has made a motion to approve our regular agenda, seconded by Councilor Selberg. If there is no discussion, a roll call vote, please.
Council members Erpenbach?
Yes.
Kylie?
Yes.
Nitzert?
Yes.
Rolfing?
Yes.
Selberg?
Yes.
Starr?
Yes.
Staley?
Yes.
Erickson?
Yes.
That is passed 8-0. Thank you. And again, folks, welcome. A very, very busy night in our country, but yet we still have a bunch of folks here who want to engage the council. So really, really proud of you. Thank you for being here. This is actually an opportunity for you to engage the council. It's our public input portion. All we'd ask is that if you want to speak to the council, just come forward. Just state your name, please. And what we would ask is that you keep your comments to 5 minutes or less. Is there anybody who wanted to engage the councilors tonight? Welcome, sir. Just come around and forward. Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Fadi Jamous. I'm a pulmonologist at Avera.
And sir, could I just get your first name again, please?
Fadi, F-A-D-Y.
Thank you, Fadi. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for offering us this opportunity to talk about the proposed tobacco-free policy.
Mr. Fadi, yes? Okay.
So we can come back.
Reading.
Okay.
We'll come back.
You're fine.
No, he's good.
Okay.
Could he spell his last name too, please?
Fadi, would you mind spelling your last name as well, please?
Jamous.
Thank you. And we are going to let you start over, and we apologize. Great job. I'm glad you're here. Fadi, welcome. Go right ahead, sir.
No, thank you. There's several of us here, and I'll just start. This is about the proposed tobacco-free policy, and thank you for letting us talk about this important life-saving measure, we all believe. As you know, in addition to the connection to cancer, tobacco use is a leading cause of heart disease and respiratory illness. We know exposure to secondhand smoke outdoors does cause respiratory irritation and may trigger asthma attacks. We know secondhand smoke is associated with heart attacks, stroke, lung cancer, emphysema, and in states and countries that have instituted bans, we know that heart attacks do drop in smokers and non-smokers. In smokers and non-smokers, even smokers benefit from secondhand exposure removal. I'm also very happy that this policy addresses all forms of tobacco, including the electronic devices. If you're around somebody who's using electronic devices, e-cigarettes, e-vaping, you are breathing nicotine. And we don't know today what that will cause, them or you. Not enough is known about their long-term effects, the e-vaping and the e-cigarette. It would be great if our patients or our friends, family members, and who are smokers, it would be great if they use the e-vape for a couple of months and then they're not e-vaping and not smoking cigarettes at all. But we haven't seen this to be a regular theme as of yet. It's important to create tobacco-free policy to promote a healthier community, protecting our residents, our visitors, from the harmful exposure of tobacco smoke. It's also very important to send a clear message to our children that they should not start tobacco. We have to be their role models. When I diagnose people with COPD and their lung function, 20%, 30%, or when they come with lung cancer, and they were previous heavy smokers, they all invariably say, "I wish I knew more. I wish I knew better." When we send a clear message, people can know more. Smokers are our friends, our family members, and our patients, and we owe it to them to be very clear. We owe it to them to help them quit. With the e-cigarettes, a lot of our young kids are picking up this habit. It may sound harmful, but there's a lot of evidence that that is a gateway. It's a gateway for them to end up smoking regular cigarettes. We're very concerned as healthcare providers about the effect of cigarettes, e-cigarettes. 1 in 3 tobacco smoker will end up having a health ailment secondary to that. Thank you very much for letting me speak. I urge you to consider to proceed with the ordinance. Thank you very much.
Doctor, thank you as well. Appreciate it. Folks, anybody else want to engage the council? Welcome.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and City Councilors. Thank you for the opportunity to speak before you this evening. My name is Megan Myers. I'm the Government Relations Director for the American Heart Association here in South Dakota. We've got a number of speakers, I think, who want to speak this evening, so I'll keep my remarks very brief. The mission of the American Heart Association is to build healthier lives free of heart disease and stroke. Since using tobacco is one of the greatest preventable contributing factors to these chronic diseases, reducing the instance of tobacco use is one of our highest policy priorities. When we look at issues such as tobacco-free environments, the primary consideration really does need to be the health and well-being of our Sioux Falls residents and visitors to our city. Tobacco-free environments support those who want to quit, and they can keep youth from ever starting. That translates to healthier communities with lower rates of chronic disease. We would urge your favorable consideration of this ordinance, and I'm happy to stand by for any questions you may have. Thanks very much for your time.
And thank you as well. Folks, anybody else want to welcome? And I would just let you know, the first two, you got done in about a minute and a half. You actually get 5 minutes, but great job. Welcome.
Hi, thank you so much for having me tonight and allowing me the opportunity. My name is Carmen Agee. I'm here tonight representing the American Cancer Society Cancer Action Network. I'm also a Sioux Falls resident, and I'm a parent. I know there's a lot of supporters here tonight that aren't going to be speaking, but if we could just ask the folks here that are in support of the tobacco-free ordinance, just a quick show of hands. There's a lot of us here tonight, so we're thankful for everybody that's here. The American Cancer Society Cancer Action Network is committed to protecting the health and well-being of our community. We're encouraged by your consideration of this ordinance as it reads without exemption. South Dakota has made great progress in tobacco prevention through implementation of the statewide smoke-free law, increased tobacco taxes, and dedicated funding for tobacco prevention and cessation programs. Unfortunately, there's still much work to be done, as smoking remains the single largest cause of preventable death and disease. The Surgeon General has declared there is no safe level of exposure to secondhand smoke. Prohibiting tobacco use on all city-owned property is an important step that the council should take to protect our residents and our guests from the harmful effects of secondhand smoke while they're enjoying our great city. A comprehensive policy free of exemption will be the easiest to educate the public about and will ensure successful compliance. These policies also change social norms and underscore that tobacco use is not a behavior that children should be exposed to or find acceptable. Places like the arena and the event center offer great children's activities, concerts, and programs. Our golf courses are places that families can go to be active and unwind. These facilities should not be exempt. Tobacco-free laws encourage tobacco users to quit or cut down and decrease youth initiation. There are many people here tonight who are watching this issue closely. Many of them see the impact of tobacco use in their daily life and their work, or because someone they know and care about has died or is suffering from disease because of tobacco use. They're hoping you'll do the right thing and make the health of our residents and our visitors a priority. We urge you to support this ordinance to prohibit the use of tobacco products, including e-cigarettes, on all city-owned property in Sioux Falls. Thank you.
Thank you, Carmen. Did anybody else want to engage the council on any topic? Welcome.
I'm Mike Keppen. I'm one of the cancer doctors at Sanford Cancer Center. Mayor Huther and council members, thank you for letting me have some of your time. As some of the previous speakers have talked about the known health risks of smoking and secondhand smoke, and I think the particular issue in this proposed legislation also affects a problem known as third-hand smoke. So studies have been done recently in children looking at what their contact can be with smokers and whether they absorb any of these toxic chemicals. So one of the studies that was done looked at a number of children whose caregivers said, I never smoke in the building. I always go outside. And when they checked the urine levels for cotinine, which is a breakdown product of nicotine, the levels were extremely high if one of their caregivers was a smoker. So either the caregivers were lying and they did sneak a cigarette inside the building where the children were taken care of, or the effects of what's known as third-hand smoke. So if you walk in a room where somebody has been smoking recently, the smoke does clear rather quickly. However, it doesn't go up into the stratosphere. Most of those harmful elements that are carcinogens, and they're of the 7,000 chemicals in cigarette smoke, about 800 are known to be carcinogenic. They settle on surfaces. So for people that are smoking outdoors, that means that there are carcinogens from this third-hand smoke that can settle on park benches, picnic tables, playground equipment if it was nearby, and the dirt. What park in the city doesn't have small children that are playing in the dirt? And so there's many different ways in which this toxic chemical can be absorbed by children. As far as secondhand smoke is concerned, we know that children of smokers have more ear infections. They miss more school because of respiratory infections. They might have a much higher risk of developing asthma that can follow them for the rest of their lives. And the worry about cancer occurring later in the life of those children is something that is a concern. There's no proof, but there's certainly a lot of concern if these toxic chemicals are absorbed by children. As far as adults are concerned, there was a study done by two scientists at Stanford University. We like to say Stanford with a T, where I work, looked at measuring cotinine levels and particulate hydrocarbons in people that were in outdoor restaurants where smoking was allowed. And they found that if somebody was within 6 to 8 feet of a smoker, that their serum levels and urine levels of some of these toxic chemicals were nearly as high as the smokers themselves. A third comment that I'd like to make is the difference between exhaled smoke and what's known as side stream smoke. So exhaled smoke is just what it sounds like after somebody has withdrawn these hot gases into their lungs. Side stream smoke is the continued smoke that's burning when the cigarette is sitting in an ashtray. And actually, it's much more toxic because we haven't had the graciousness of the smoker to filter out many of those bad chemicals into their own lungs. So side stream smoke is really quite dangerous as well. And that's a big concern for adults who might be within several feet of somebody that's smoking, to get side stream smoke as well and have these chemicals in the body. If you've ever been around smokers, and you know, I think many of you remember when we grew up how common smoke was. It was ubiquitous. We've had a lot of these chemicals throughout our bodies. So for this ordinance to try to reduce the possibility of non-smokers who don't wish to have these toxic chemicals in their body, this is another very, very important step, and I certainly hope that you'll support this going forward. Thank you.
Dr. Kevin, thank you as well. Did anybody else want to engage the council? Welcome.
Greetings. I'm getting famous for this. It happens to be election day, and check it out, I'm wearing red, white, and blue, so good way to start. I've got two topics today, and the interesting thing about them is that I'm going to make completely dissimilar recommendations. On the one hand, I think we need more government influence, and on the other topic, I think we need less. And since they're both current events, I figured I'd try to squeeze them into one 5-minute presentation. Alcohol. Well, I should maybe let some of the doctors talk about this because I'm sure they're better informed than I am. But alcohol at low levels, it's not so harmful. Gets people to settle down a little bit, relax maybe. But in increasing quantities, it's increasingly dangerous. In moderate quantities, people get a little less inhibited, a little more reckless, a little more violent. In massive quantities, people die. But it's pretty popular stuff. I came across a study in the UK. They found it to be the most harmful drug. Now, isn't that ever a strong criticism? But people like it, so other people sell it to them. And if you're a greedy bar, maybe what you'll do is you'll have a lot of markup, a lot of sales, get a lot of people drunk, call police a lot, make a lot of money. If you're a responsible business, maybe you have a restaurant, sell less of the stuff, make less money. Doesn't look so good, but it's more responsible. There's some legal considerations when you get into this business. I tracked down 2 laws. I'm sure there are many more. One law says you better not sell alcoholic beverages to somebody who's already drunk, and there's laws against disorderly conduct. Once in a while, a bar gets sued and lose all kinds of money. That doesn't happen much in South Dakota, and they made a law against it. But notice who I ascribed responsibility to. I figure everybody who's involved has their share of responsibility. Cities making laws, I figure there's some responsibility there. Bars sell the stuff, and people drink it. So everybody's got their share of the issue. We can note that police calls cost money, and people pay for that. I don't have an estimate yet. Is it $100 a call? Is it $500? Could it add up if you have one business making a couple hundred calls a year? And for each call, you know, maybe there's prosecution, jail time, adds up. It's a hidden subsidy for a small part of a local industry. We should be aware of this. So, you know, if a small part of the local industry has some problems, I think we should study that small part and then study a different part of the same industry to try to compare these different business models and see if we can't make the road a little better safe, a little safer place, save some taxpayer money, reduce some crime. But mostly, we need a study because I don't really know what's different between the businesses that don't have any trouble and the businesses that do. But I'm sure you could figure it out with a little bit of investigation. And that was part 1, recommending more government influence. Part 2, we're going to talk about mass incarceration. If you've read statistics, you know that we're number 1 in prisons, but that's not something we want to be number 1 in. Now, this is kind of related to the guts of today's topic, but not the core of it. There was a bank robbery in town, and 6 local schools got clamped down. I don't know why, because bank robbers don't hide out in schools. How does clamping down schools make the world a better place? I don't know. But you turn schools into prisons, and you get people used to mass incarceration on government whim. It's a great strategy if you want to develop bad things in government, excessive government power. Here's a few quotations that you should be familiar with. One comes out of the Constitution. Number 2 is on my T-shirt that I use in international travel. People who trade freedom for security have neither. And since I'm out of time, I'd like to bid everybody a good evening. And that's a view out my back window.
David, thank you.
You're welcome.
Folks, did anybody else want to engage the council? Welcome.
Sierra Broussard, Sioux Falls. I understand that we have this smoking issue here, so I'm not going to get too deeply involved in it, but we're going to sit here every day for the next 4 weeks on Wiley's. I have a private investigator digging into the assets of these police officers because Wiley's, let's make the record clear, got sued 6 times for excessive force. I have to see if these police officers are in a lawsuit. If they are, then we need to pull their badges away from them. Wiley's has been not only on this particular location, but they owned the vault. Cigarettes is bad for your health, but cigarettes versus alcohol and sexual assault that's fixing to take place within the city, which once more we have to elevate this here. Wiley's downtown has been numerous of police calls and services. I have contacted sexual abuse advocates, and they said that Wiley's has been on the radar for them for the past few years. Sexual assault advocates in the city is saying that we have a problem, but nobody wants to listen to that. In 2 weeks, I'm going to have a prostitute that is a reformed prostitute coming over that is reformed, getting $500 to $1,000 every 2 weeks on a city employee. There's 7 city employees paying for prostitutes that I'm dealing with on these streets, but nobody wants to hear that. But we're gonna make it be heard, and we're gonna make the names be known, and the light's gonna come out the tunnel of these city officials and these city employees that are participating in this. So we're gonna bring the evidence out after the Wiley's is out. But Mayor, you know as well as I know, you was there for the vote. That was not acceptable. What they're doing at Wiley's is not acceptable here. I don't know if you participated in this Wiley situation here, but we have them literally sitting on the floor, passed out, people fighting, and the cops don't want to deal with it, so they push them out of the bar, and they start fighting in the bar outside. And then cars are stopping and traffic stopping. Do we need this kind of stuff in Sioux Falls? Pat, Greg, and Teresa is the only ones that got involved in this situation here. And I'm not saying Wiley's is the first one because they're all going to the PAVE, and the PAVE is having numerous of calls there too. But I took up and stood up to Augustana College last year when Augustana College was being discriminated against Wiley's. And Michelle decided that this was an embarrassment because Mr. Ducan, the attorney, is one of her best friends. You can't put friendship and politics aside here. We have to do what's right for Wiley's, and let's crack down on this drinking. And next year, if this continues, let's pull that liquor license away from Wiley's. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Sierra. Welcome, Scott.
Scott Harrisman, Sioux Falls. I saw on the news, I think there was a press conference, and then KDLT did a story about Councilor Ralphing and the mayor talking about the importance of voting. And I thought it was great. Yeah, the number 1 ranking Democrat in the state is out encouraging people to vote, and I think that's wonderful. And I also believe that the First Amendment is one of the most powerful tools in our country and represents our freedoms, that we have a right to vote and to speak out in this country. But with the First Amendment comes, the famous last words, you have a right to your opinion, you don't have a right to your own facts. So I was, past May, the mayor was at a listening and learning session that was replayed on CityLink and on their YouTube channel, and he told the students that the event center election was record-breaking. He went on to say this yesterday on KDLT. Mayor Mike Heather says that one major facility in Sioux Falls is a perfect example of what voting can accomplish. We had over 40,000 people vote on the event center. Mayor Heather said over 40% voter turnout, and it ended up being the largest voter turnout in the city of Sioux Falls. It was a large voter turnout, and that's partially true. For a special election, it probably was the largest voter turnout. But as you can see from up here, these figures come from the Secretary of State total vote system and the City of Sioux Falls 2011 election data, that there's been several elections that have beat the event center vote. And one of the other things to say is that it was an advisory vote. All it meant was you said, I'm in favor of this. It got passed on to the city council. The city council approved the bonds. If the city council wouldn't have approved the bonds, there was no legal recourse for the voters unless they did a petition drive similar to what the city administration building. I guess what I'm trying to say here, it's great that you're encouraging people to vote, but why don't we do it a little honestly there so you can see the numbers that in 2012 was the record-breaking year. That's all I have on that. Let's talk about Wiley's a little bit. 4 years ago, November 20th of 2012, the vault was up here, and there was concerns about their liquor license. They had 154 police calls in 12-month period, and Wiley's is now up to about 182 in a 10-month period. I watched this meeting the other night. It was a 4-hour meeting. The discussion on the vault lasted about 35 minutes, and then there was a deferral to another meeting, and there was another about 30 minutes before the city council voted 7-1 to renew the license. Rex Ruffin was the dissenting vote on that, and I believe Michelle was on the council at the time, and you were the mayor. Nobody else was up that's on the dais was on the council at that time. Councilor Jameson said during the meeting, these kind of reviews of the establishments was important to establish a public record of concerns. As the meeting went on, there was another license for a C-store called Mercado, and the attorney for Mercado got chastised by the mayor. The mayor said this in the meeting 4 years ago. It is the duty of the city council to review all liquor licenses that are up for renewal. If they want to complete some additional due diligence on any of these, whether it be the vault, whether it be Mercado, or any of the other establishments that serve alcohol in this town, they have the ability to do that. In this case, they wanted to ask some questions or do some additional due diligence on the Mercado before they make a decision on that. So before you start to accuse a counselor or someone else for doing something that is appropriate or not, I would encourage you to use caution. And the attorney interrupted, and then the mayor went on to say, I would encourage you to tone it down a bit. The council has a right to ask questions. So we had a council meeting about Wiley's, and some reason people were embarrassed and ashamed and that we brought this up. The mayor said it 4 years ago. The council has the right to do that. The council has a right to review these licenses. And as I told people who were upset about it, I said, they have to vote on this. This is important. It's on their record to vote for or against the liquor license. Ironically, the vault closed a year later, and the owner of the vault is now part owner of Wiley's. I don't know if he brought all his problems from over there over to Wiley's, but that's the case. As David, yeah.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
Appreciate it. Good job. Welcome.
Tim Stanga. I also was here last week. When you have city councilors that aren't afraid to ask the hard questions, to be able to realize that the citizens pay for every time a police officer goes to a call, I think they should have a right to ask questions and try to figure out what we can do to try to hold down the calls. But when you come out again and chastise people over TV because they want to ask questions, that's where this city is sad. People, whoever chastised the ones that were, shouldn't apologize to the city council that did get chastised. Number two, the smoking situation in Sioux Falls. I'm not against smokers. I'm not for smokers. But the thing is, I think what we have to do is we have to start in our own yard. All city employees should not be allowed to smoke on any property that the city owns. Drive by the interstate, guy's out there watering trees and he's out there smoking. That's a city park. He works for the city. Why is he smoking while he's on job? I don't know. All city vehicles should be smoke-free. All city garages should be smoke-free. Let's start in our own backyard, and let's go through our own backyard before we start worrying about the public. Another thing, I'm going to bring up the drinking. Drinking kills more people, I would almost think, than smoking does. And we're going after the smokers. It's amazing that we can't pick on, we try picking on this person, but yet we got to go after this person. Now we're going to go after the smokers. Where do we stop? We make big money out at the event center on drinking. I've talked to several people that have been to the event center, and there's people that are standing in back of them so drunk that they can't even enjoy what they spent $100 a ticket on. Now, I think we got to realize that if we're going to sell booze, we got to realize that if a person's intoxicated, we either escort them out or we don't sell them any more booze. Because if we have to stop selling booze at the event center, we'd be in trouble. But I do believe that we can find a place for people to smoke outside. We do it at all the bars now. People haven't had problems with it. It's worked. And I don't have no problem with the way it is now.
Thank you, Tim. Appreciate that. Folks, did anybody else want to engage the council? Well, thank you very much. Appreciate it. Very good dialogue. We'll now move to item number 11, please.
First reading, an ordinance of the City of Sioux Falls, South Dakota, amending the Code of Ordinances of the city by amending Chapter 92, Health and Sanitation, by adding a subchapter entitled Tobacco-Free Policy for All City Property.
Good evening, City Council. I am Jill Franken, Public Health Director with the City of Sioux Falls, and I'm teamed up tonight with Don Kearney, Director of Parks and Recreation. This item is proposed ordinance that addresses the #1 cause of preventable illness and death. We know that any exposure to tobacco is hazardous to health. Tobacco use has been identified as a health concern in our Community Health Needs Assessment, both in 2012 and the report we released this year. The intent of the proposed ordinance is to eliminate tobacco use on city-owned property. This includes all forms of tobacco, including electronic devices. I do want to clarify that when we say city-owned property, it does not apply to other public spaces such as neighborhood sidewalks or areas like downtown Sioux Falls. There's a wealth of information supporting the benefits of implementing tobacco policies, and you've also heard a lot of testimony already and public input about the hazards of tobacco use, so I'm not going to get into that tonight. But we are going to talk about 5 really important reasons for this policy. Your vote for this policy will say to our youth that you care about their future and that you are willing to adopt a comprehensive policy that sets the right example for them and that decreases youth exposure to tobacco use. You will eliminate tobacco use on our city property, which will provide incentive for people to quit. And by the way, a survey of current U.S. adult smokers, 70% of them reported that they wanted to quit completely. You will save lives. Please remember, 3 South Dakotans die every day from tobacco-related disease, and 21 South Dakota children who are alive today will die prematurely of tobacco-caused diseases. You will reduce exposure to secondhand smoke for over 80% of residents who do not smoke. You will help decrease the cost of health care due to the effects of tobacco use, such as lung cancer, other cancers, COPD, heart disease, stroke, asthma, diabetes, and low birth weight babies. As a reminder, the annual costs to our state related to smoking alone are $373 million, or in our state, I should say, are $373 million in healthcare expenses and $233 million in lost productivity. And your vote for this comprehensive, universal policy will allow for clear and successful education to the community that no tobacco is allowed on any city property. So since we first brought this proposal forward to the Land Use Committee and a most recent council informational meeting, there have been several questions. So I want to take a few minutes and address some of those questions that you and others have had, including, what is the goal of this policy? What are we trying to achieve? What about enforcement? How will that work? What's happening in other cities? Are policies like this effective? How does this policy apply to, say, golf courses and other properties? So first, I'll address our goal and what we believe this policy can achieve. Our primary goal of this policy, or this proposal, is to increase, obviously, the community's health. We've talked about that by decreasing tobacco use. You'll see on the left of this slide the current rates of smoking from the County Health Rankings report in 2014. I talked about this a little at informational, but I'm going to repeat this. The current rate in Minnehaha County of smoking is 17%, and Lincoln County, the current rate is 14%. The average for our entire Sioux Falls MSA of smoking is 16.7%. There are 43 counties that have a lower rate of smoking than we do in Minnehaha County. And there are 19 counties that have a lower rate of smoking than Lincoln County has. For a city like ours, I believe we can do better, and I believe we should do better. So let's talk about goals. The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention have set health goals for our nation called Healthy People 2020. For our nation's tobacco measure, they've set a goal of decreasing adult tobacco use to 20% by 2020. The U.S. rate is currently 16.8%. The South Dakota Department of Health has also set 2020 goals through their statewide tobacco prevention plan. The current percentage of South Dakota adults who smoke is 18.6%, and the state's 2020 goal is 14.5%. While we strive towards the Healthy People 2020 goal, it would be amazing to get to 12%. We believe achieving the state goal of 14.5 is really an achievable first step for our community. The important thing we want to stress is this work is realistic, and yes, it is achievable. So next, as I mentioned, in the 5 key reasons for supporting this proposal, education and compliance will be more successful with a universal policy that applies to all city properties. Well, however, an important question that has been raised relates to community compliance. Can a policy like this be reasonably enforced? Is it realistic? Well, it is important to remember that more than 1,200 municipalities across the country already regulate tobacco outdoors. And this discussion we're having is not unlike what happened during, with the South Dakota legislature when they passed the Clean Indoor Air Act in 2009. We also have great experience in implementing tobacco-free youth recreation in our community without a single citation. So we have much experience to draw on when it comes to implementing this tobacco-free policy in Sioux Falls. As we talked with other communities, public education, awareness were always primary tools used in implementation. Just like our current tobacco-free youth recreation policy, signage where the policy applies and requests for voluntary compliance have worked very well. People are generally responsive and respectful when they're informed about the policy. However, we have heard your questions about enforcing this policy. You're concerned about enforcing it on our city-owned golf courses. You are concerned about requiring our partners who manage our city-owned facilities to enforce this policy. Therefore, we are committed that the first full year will be focused on education, awareness, and tobacco prevention messaging, and we are supportive of policy language to reflect this intent. So that includes posting signage, developing and distributing informational materials for use at our city facilities, and communicating with the public about the ordinance, as well as promoting resources like our outstanding South Dakota Quit line. After our first year of this policy being in place, we will aim for a continued track record of achieving compliance without the need for citations. As I mentioned before, education and compliance will be more successful with a universal policy that applies to all city properties. So I just mentioned that over 1,200 municipalities have implemented tobacco-free outdoor policies. So let's answer the next question. What are other cities doing? Well, here are a couple of good examples. First is Bloomington, Minnesota, population of about 87,000, which passed its outdoor tobacco policy in 2004. So they've already had 12 years of really good experience in this area. Their policy includes work sites, restaurants, bars and their outdoor spaces, and more than 90 parks and recreational areas. Those parks include 2 city-owned golf courses and the Bloomington Ice Garden. In 2011, their county, Hennepin County, followed suit, implementing its own tobacco-free policy for county properties. As you can see by the chart then to the right, they have seen a return on their investment with their policy approach, with a decreased smoking rate since the policy's implementation. Next, here's Chicago, Illinois. Now, of course, I'm sure your first reaction might be to think Chicago is nothing like Sioux Falls, and in many respects, that's probably true. However, Chicago still is a community of people. There's parents, children, workers, and it is a community of places, work sites, parks, entertainment venues. They expanded their tobacco policy for outdoor spaces in 2014. So they also had the same discussions we're having here. But their discussions had to focus on 580 parks for over 8,100 acres, 250 field houses, a waterfront area, 7 golf courses, and nationally known sports stadiums. Their policy also included many Chicago Housing Authority complexes, hospital campuses, and college and university campuses. You might be interested to learn that Soldier Field is actually a leased property, and it has a smoke-free and no reentry policy. And the 2 major baseball league stadiums for the White Sox and the World Series champions Cubs are also completely tobacco-free for spectators and players. It's incredible to see what has happened since they implemented their policy. You can see in just 2 years, their smoking rate has decreased by 2%. So again, 1,200 municipalities nationwide in all parts of the country, from small rural towns to large metropolitan areas. This work is realistic, it's enforceable, and it produces positive results for improving health. I'm now going to invite Don Kearney to come forward and visit with you about the final question that relates to how this policy would apply to other types of properties.
Well, thank you, Jill. As you know, one of your questions over the several conversations we've had about this has been the public golf courses and our other managed properties. And I think the key point to keep in mind is that whether the facility is managed by city employees or whether it's managed by management groups like Dakota Golf or SMG, those folks are managing those facilities on our behalf. It's still city property. As such, they're an extension of the city, and they really are partners of the city as a managing organization, and they did so with the understanding that they would be accountable as we are for implementing those city policies. We have standard language in our management agreements that our managers of facilities must also comply with, and that would include city ordinances, rules and regulations that the city adopts, whether that be currently or in the future. It's also important to note that many places like the zoo, the Arboretum, Great Bear, our Parks and Recreation staff are working side by side with those managing organizations like I just mentioned, because we do a lot of the grounds care, and so it's not a total turnkey kind of situation in most of our partnering organizations and managed facilities. And the point being that, again, the management of those facilities are a collaborative effort. On this slide, we provided a few examples of other communities who have implemented tobacco-free policies, and I think one of the questions the council's had are, how do other cities manage it? For example, the BBT Arena on the campus of Northern Kentucky University and the Showware Center in Kent, Washington are examples of other SMG-managed facilities with tobacco policies and no re-entry policies. So from concerts to sports events, patrons are not using tobacco, nor are they permitted to leave and re-enter the facility. Another example is Eagle Bend Golf Course in Lawrence, Kansas, which has a tobacco-free policy. The courses are included in a broad policy that also includes any parks-oriented or leased lands, including athletic fields, dog parks, open spaces, skating rinks, hiking and biking trails, pools, and park shelters. And interestingly enough, the course is voted as one of the top 3 courses in Kansas by the Kansas City Star and has been named as a places to play by Golf Digest. In general, the management of those courses say they've not seen any impact on the policy on business and consider the tobacco ban a non-issue. The enforcement largely happens through the honor system with signage at their entrances, in their parking lots, and buildings on the golf course. They tell us that it's very rare for them to have to tell people that they are not allowed to smoke or use tobacco on the property. And earlier, Jill mentioned also that Bloomington and Chicago as cities with golf courses included in their policies. And this is just great reinforcement as the proposal before you, as we strive for great results with our tobacco policy as well, knowing that it's been done in these other communities. To address golf courses in particular, I think it's always important to go back to those top reasons for the policy that we shared with you earlier. It's important for us to implement a consistent policy at all properties, and it helps with the successful education and enforcement. It creates tobacco-free environments that help people quit and prevents youth from starting. And it reduces tobacco use as a result it decreases death, disability, economic costs related to tobacco use. And one of the really proud things I'm able to say tonight as well is that Great Life has informed us that they intend to support our proposal. They are committed to healthy lifestyles through golf and fitness, and they realize that tobacco use is an important component of creating a great life. Therefore, they have stated that if this proposal passes and we are able to create tobacco-free city properties, including the golf courses, they too will also create tobacco-free policies at their Sioux Falls golf courses and perhaps extending that policy further out into their network of facilities. The city courses plus the Great Life courses then would have consistent policies across all golf courses in Sioux Falls, and this means that even more for our residents and visitors to enjoy a healthy environment while golfing. And again, there will be more places to provide positive role modeling for our youth. We're pleased that several organizations have already communicated their support for this policy, including the Sioux Falls Board of Health, the Parks and Recreation Board, health organizations like the American Cancer Society, the American Heart Association, and others, as well as other community partners and event organizers. You heard Jill say earlier that the proposal is good public health policy, and the National Recreation and Parks Association agrees. This is our accrediting body, and it puts our city's parks among the best in the country, with only 1% of parks agencies achieving this honor. NRPA came forward with not only the position statement, but also with national polling showing that 4 out of 5 Americans support eliminating use of tobacco in public parks and recreation centers. This points to the dangers of tobacco use and the need for communities to take steps to reduce it. As we all know, workforce development has been a hot topic here in Sioux Falls and across the state, and I think we all realize that truly is a challenge for our city and our state. I found it interesting in a December 2012 issue of Governing magazine where it discussed the health of a community and how it can attract and retain businesses and workers. And one of their conclusions in the article was, it states, in the end, cities and states that improve the health rankings will win more than just a moral victory for a better quality of life for their citizens. They get a leg up in the global competition for jobs. And the key point there is that employers want to employ healthy workforces, and because it reduces their insurance cost and absenteeism and all those things that go along with having healthy employees. I just close by offering some of my personal reflections on the proposed policy by stating that wouldn't it be great if our parks and our city properties were places that we could go to promote and advertise as tobacco-free to our citizens, to our guests, and yes, our prospective businesses and residents. And wouldn't it be great if our parks and city properties were places that our children could use without being exposed to the detrimental influence of tobacco use? And wouldn't it be great if our parks and city properties were free from cigarette butts and other tobacco-related litter. And wouldn't it be great if we could be seen as a city that leads in the tobacco-free city property arena as a way to promote healthier, more vibrant community, and one that mirrors our great city and our great park system. Jill?
All right, thanks, Don. Yeah, it would indeed be great to know that we are taking important and necessary steps to reduce death and disability in our community by addressing the devastating effects of tobacco use. I believe it is time for this public health policy, which will give us a return on our minimal investment. Again, these are the reasons why a universal tobacco-free ordinance for all city-owned property is essential. It could be even further simplified in just these statements. Is there really any place where using tobacco is safe? Nope, there is not. Therefore, let's set new public health policy. Let's set a new standard by making all our city-owned property healthier places for our residents and visitors. Thank you.
Jill, Don, thank you. Mary, thank you as well. Councilors, any comments, questions? Yes, Councilor Starr.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
You're welcome.
Maybe for Director Kearney, if you don't mind, Jill. I believe we have a history in Sioux Falls of making our parks a safe and healthy place for our citizens. I know the other day we were having a conversation, and I believe you've been in charge of our parks for over 12 years, 13, I'm not sure exactly.
Yeah.
Help me with what parks we allow alcohol use, because it was one of the things that we had maybe the history of. We talk about whether alcohol compares to banning cigarettes in our park and tobacco products. So tell me how we don't allow people to use alcohol and maybe relate that to this.
Yeah, well, currently we have 80 parks, and I think the current number is 12 parks where alcohol is prohibited from being consumed. There are two categories where those parks really fall into. One are deed restrictions. So when we were gifted the land, the property owner at the time said, I'll grant you this property as long as you guarantee that it'd be alcohol-free. And so we have some in that category, and then we have some primarily in our downtown area where we've had challenges with overconsumption of alcohol, really not a healthy environment, and it was really abuse at a level that we were not willing to tolerate. And so I would put those 12 in those two categories.
Perfect, thank you. I think that's the point that I'm trying to make, is that we do things to make our parks safe. We do things to make them healthy, and I think this is one of those proposals that we can move forward with that really makes an impact to our community. So thank you for being here this evening, and thank you, Director Franken, as well.
Thank you.
Councilor Bach.
Thank you. Director Kearney, could you stay just for a minute? Talk about your comments about Great Life are really interesting to me. That's new information in terms of their commitment to this. Can you talk about that more? Do you have that in writing? Is that just, how is that something we can?
I wasn't actually in the meeting when that occurred, but I think Jill was, so let Jill talk to it.
So Director Kearney and I have been tag teaming a lot of this work, and just this afternoon, Don Hill, who's with Great Life, met with me this afternoon, and he had indicated some interest in this policy, and this afternoon did say that we could publicly share with the council their intention to go tobacco-free on those golf courses should this policy pass and include golf courses for the city of Sioux Falls. He said that a letter of support shall be forthcoming. He indicated we could use their logo or use that in our materials that we're using, and then he indicated that he would want to be here on December 6th to speak to this as well. But I am also sure he said he'd be very happy to talk to any city council who have questions about that also.
That to me the letter of intent would be golden.
Yes.
For that night.
Yes.
That would be awesome. Thank you. And then my other question for you then, Director Franken, is talk about your proposal for a 1-year phase in on the enforcement of this ordinance. What might that look like? And would we need to amend the ordinance the way that it is now?
Well, we've been able to enjoy tobacco-free youth recreation without any citations being issued. Quite frankly, we haven't even had a complaint to our contract system or our complaint system about this since we implemented this. Our police department have reported no issues with tobacco-free youth recreation. So I think we could, quite frankly, almost do nothing if we do a great job in educating our public and not amend this ordinance. But certainly if we did something to say we will assure that the first year is education, awareness, and doing things that can help prevent us from having to issue maybe citations in that first year, I really think we could put that in place. But I hesitate to even talk about citations because you heard that other policy that's been implemented. They just haven't had that as an issue either. But certainly we'd be willing to work on something that could satisfy the intent of that in the current ordinance or through an amendment.
Okay, thank you.
Councilor Kiley.
Thank you, and I'd like to thank the members of the public who are here this evening for public input. A lot of good information. In fact, I and one of the other counselors, as we were walking back from dinner, we were questioning the effects of secondhand smoke outdoors, and it was like you were following us in our conversation because I think it's Dr. Kevin from Sanford, and that's Sanford without the T. I appreciated your additional information on effects of secondhand smoke outdoors, as well as hearing about the effects of third-hand smoke, which is, I'll have to say, that's the first time I've heard that information. And I'd like to think that I'm fairly well read on the topic, but that was wonderful information, and it's to me, this is all about the health of our residents, especially the health of our children. And then I'll just close by saying, I do like the idea of first-year education versus citation so that we can educate, because obviously that's what we're trying to do here anyway, is educate the public. And then that's going to present some challenges because not all individuals inside city limits are Sioux Falls residents. They're visitors to our community. So we would have to take and plan for the necessary precautions to ensure that visitors are aware as well, and even beyond that first year. But again, thank you for all the members of the public for presenting.
Councilor Selberg.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Welcome.
First of all, Director Carney and Director Franken, thank you for all this. The study's terrific. I think the work you put in is noble. I get where you're going with this. I've said this before. I think you and I have talked a little bit about this. Nobody has to tell me much about the dangers of smoking. I grew up with both parents smoking, around secondhand smoke in the house, in the car. Lost my father to lung cancer about 15 years ago. I understand. I've completely been with the ban on indoor smoking. I get it. I can see it with parks, obviously, where there's a lot of kids. I get it. The big question that keeps swimming around in my head with all this is kind of, where do you draw the line? How much government is too much government? What's acceptable, what's not? I did hear the secondhand smoke thing tonight. That was interesting. I also know when we're talking about people that are coming to an event center and standing outside, chances are if they're having a smoke, they're standing next, anybody who'd be affected by that are probably the other 10 people standing within 3 feet of them smoking as well. If Joe Golfer's on hole 16 having a cigar, I'm having a hard time figuring out who's going to be affected by the secondhand smoke. Again, I get the arguments on all this. I don't argue with the dangers of tobacco. I've seen it. I get it. I'm just trying to kind of wrap my head around, where's the line you draw? What's acceptable? Why is alcohol at some of these places acceptable, but we're going to say smoking outside isn't? So tonight I'm going to be voting yes, because I think this is a worthy topic of a couple more weeks of discussion. And I'm just trying to kind of be honest where I'm coming at from it, where there's still some questions in my mind that I have to get through, but I appreciate the efforts and the argument, and thank you.
Councilor Staley.
And I would echo what Councilor Selberg said about growing up with smoking. I think people who the baby boomers of our community. We all had that experience. We're in the doctor's office, in the bank, we're at home, in the car, wherever. And in fact, I used to smoke myself. And I have relatives that smoke. I have compassion for these people. I know it's very difficult to quit. But I also need to say that there are many behaviors in our society that human beings do that are detrimental to their being. They overeat. Alcohol. I personally think alcohol abuse is more detrimental than smoking is. I've seen the devastating, ravaging effects of people who drink too much and what it does in homes and what it does to individuals' bodies. So that, I mean, if we were going to go and ban something, I guess I'd be on board to ban the use of alcohol, but that prohibition didn't work. It did not work. So then we also have the smoking aspect. So I'm leery about stepping into this. People have been talking about us, talking not about us too, but to us. I have to commend this group for your efforts to us. We've gotten lots of emails from the Heart Association, Cancer Association. I understand that. I'm all for a program in our community that encourages people to live well, encourages us to have good behaviors, but I don't think making a smoker into a criminal or giving them a $95 fine for being caught on a park bench smoking is going to be the answer. And we're going to have people coming to town at the event center and smoking or not knowing about it, and it's going to set up a logistical nightmare for enforcement. And we can say the first year is going to be just educational, but at the end of the day, when this comes down to be an ordinance, it can and will be enforced upon people. And so I think education's great. I think the policy that we have in place right now that says you cannot smoke if you're around children at a playground or at any activities that we have, that's fabulous. But this other part, I just think it's maybe creating a problem that we don't have to fix right now. I will be voting to put it to a second reading, but I just had to be upfront with where I'm at with this.
Councilor Erickson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to make a motion to approve and set the second reading for Tuesday, December 6th at 7 p.m.
I'll second it.
Councilor Erickson's made a motion to set a date of hearing, second reading for Tuesday, December 6th, and it was seconded by Council Chair Rolfing. Is there any other, yes, Councilor Kiley? Councilor Kiley, I apologize. Did anybody else want to speak before Councilor Kiley? Councilor Kiley.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Because we have heard the effects of alcohol, and I agree that, I mean, alcohol can certainly be detrimental to one's health as well, too. But I would just like to have one of the experts correct me if I'm wrong here, but I have over the last few weeks tried to do some searches on alcohol-related deaths and compare that with smoke or tobacco-related deaths. And it appears from what I can find that tobacco-related deaths are 4 to 5 times greater than that of alcohol-related deaths. Can anybody speak to that?
Jill or Don, are you ready to speak to that? If you're not, then you have some homework to do, but if you can speak to it, come forward. Welcome, Jill.
I believe that's correct. I don't have the exact statistic in front of me to accurately describe that, but I saw a head nodding. Can I ask somebody to come forward and give that statement, or would you prefer that later?
Next week.
Council Chair, what do you think? It's a first reading.
If they have expertise that could answer the question right now and be
Okay.
over with it.
We'll
So,
get that.
yes.
We will get that information to you.
I'm fine to wait a couple of
Are you
weeks
sure,
for
Councilor
that.
Carter?
That's quite all right.
All right.
Okay.
Quite all right. And again, I'm not trying to state that there's no ill effects of overindulging in alcohol, but just like to have it presented accurately if we could.
Very good. Councilor Staley?
Well, and can I add to that? If let's also compare the deaths of people who die from heart disease because of obesity.
Oh, that's going to be
A roll call vote, please.
Council members Erpenbach,
Yes.
Kiley,
Yes.
Nitzert,
Yes.
Rolfing,
Yes.
Selberg,
Yes.
Starr,
Yes.
Staley,
Yes.
Erickson.
Yes.
Thank you, Council. That is passed 8-0. Item 12.
A resolution approving the release of part of a permanent water line easement located in the east half of the northeast corner of Section 5, Tract 102 North, Range 49 West of the 5th per Meridian, Minnehaha County, South Dakota.
Good evening. Kirk Peppel, Public Works Engineering. First item here is a water line easement located north of the city near city well number 69 along the Big Sioux River. The portion to be released is currently there are no facilities in this portion. The property owner has requested that we release this portion because it's not being utilized, and the owner has complied with the city engineering easement release procedures. The property owner has granted a new area for the future realignment of the facilities that are going to be going on up there. Engineer supports the release.
Thank you so much. Is there anybody in the audience who want to speak about this resolution? Very good. Councilors?
I would move that we approve this.
Second, Erickson.
Been a motion to approve this resolution by Council Chair Rolfing, seconded by Councilor Erickson. A roll call vote, please.
Council members Erpenbach,
Yes.
Kylie,
Yes.
Neitzert,
Yes.
Rolfing,
Yes.
Selberg,
Yes.
Starr,
Yes.
Staley,
Yes.
Erickson.
Yes.
That is passed 8-0. Item 13, please.
A resolution approving the release of part of a permanent easement located in vacated 14th Street lying adjacent to Lot 19 in County Auditor's subdivision in the northwest quarter of Section 24, Tract 101 North, Range 50 west of the 5th per Meridian, Minnehaha County, South Dakota.
Once again, Kirk Peppel, Public Works Engineering. The easement area to be released is located near 12th and Marion Road. Actually is a part of the vacated West 14th Street as shown there, the blue area on the map. There are no facilities in the yellow portion to be released. The easement that is remnant from the West 14th vacation was in 1989. Like I said, there are no facilities in the portion to be released. The owner has requested this area to be released for a building project that they're working on. The owner has complied with our release procedures, and engineering supports the release.
Thank you very much. Did anybody want to speak to this item? Councilors?
Move to approve.
Second, Star.
Council Vice Chair Kiley has made a motion to approve this resolution, seconded by Councilor Starr. If no discussion, a roll call vote, please.
Council members Erpenbach,
Yes.
Kylie,
Yes.
Neitzert,
Yes.
Rolfing,
Yes.
Selberg,
Yes.
Starr,
Yes.
Staley,
Yes.
Erickson.
Yes.
That is passed 8-0. Thank you, Council. Any other business tonight?
Move to adjourn, Neitzert.
Councilor Neitzert has made a motion to adjourn this meeting, seconded by Councilor Staley. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you, Sioux Falls. Appreciate it. Thank you, City Council. Appreciate it as well. Make it a great, great night.